Well, welcome to our fourth podcast. Dan Sullivan and John Bowen. We're going over the greater game. We want you to join us on this journey. Today, we're talking about one of the most powerful multipliers there is, the greater property, how your genius, your unique genius, becomes your empire. We're at stage two on the pyramid. We're using our energy for expansion. Dan, you have become such a powerful believer in IP where, quite honestly, I wasn't. A good mutual friend of ours, Peter Diamandis, said, with AI, IP is dead. You have won me over and totally. And as we were writing the book together, it just became so obvious where I missed. And we got to talk to Peter a little bit more. But Dan, give us a little bit of why you're such a big believer in IP and why this is so important if we're going to have the energy for expansion.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about property, and everybody we're talking to has property. They have real estate. They have great lifestyle, and these are assets that can be appraised, and it's part of their net worth. And
Mhm.
but one of the things that's happened, and I think it's a function of the technological change that's occurred in the world. When we first started Strategic Coach as a workshop program, 1989, right off the bat, our means of communicating entrepreneurs to think about things differently is we created thinking tools, and we've mentioned a few of the thinking tools on the podcast. And a thinking tool is just a structure where we ask you about your experience and we have you come up with the best of your experience. And then we put the best of your experience together and then saying, if you put this together in a new way now, what will it produce? And it'll produce new processes, new products, new services. And what's happened in the whole world since the microchip has progressed and it's created the internet, an entirely new kind of property has been created that can be seen that if you look at the valuations of large corporations, 1980, you go back to 1980, you look at what their valuation is, it was fairly conventional. It was buildings, property, it was equipment, it was fleets, it was real estate and everything, but it was all tangible property.
Mhm.
What happened, and it happened about 6 or 7 years ago, the Patent Bureau in Washington made a fundamental breakthrough, and they said that education and entertainment is now can become patentable. Okay, so you put together a great entertainment show, you can patent that. Our thinking processes, and we have 250 or more right now, I think there's more than 250, each of them, and we're gradually putting them through the process. We have a phenomenal intellectual property lawyer who's assisted us with this. And each of the patents is gradually. I just got two of them today before we started, and I said, "Well, that feels good, you know." And these are appraised. Like there's house appraisals, there's real estate appraisals, there's appraisals for your ideas. So if you go back to 1980, that 80% that was tangible, now you take the largest corporations, a lot of them are tech companies right now,
Mhm.
and you look at them, and we now have trillion-dollar valuations of large companies. 80 to 90% of their valuation is based on intangibles. It's new ideas and processes that they put into digital form, and this is providing great capabilities for everybody else. The consumers are the real buyers here. So what I've been gradually demonstrating in the program, I said, look, every quarter I'm going to tell you where our patents are. Well, the last quarter we got them framed, so it's you
Do you
get a
have enough wall space for all these, Dan?
well, that's going to be a good problem. It's going to be, but we put the first 40 up, and it's we have cafes in our conference centers, and there's 40 frames. We just started with 40, and we're up over 80 right now. And I said, what is that? And I said, that's a multiple of millions of dollars of value that's sitting on the wall. And there's something that really is interesting when you realize that the ideas that you use just to do your day-to-day business, but you're doing it in a unique way. You've come up with a new way to create shortcuts for other people. This becomes intellectual property, and there's a price for this, there's a process for it, and you have to pay for the process. But generally, whatever you pay to go through the process, you're going to get a 20 times return. That's at a minimum, you're going to get a 20 times return. Sometimes it's greater. And the world is supporting you in this because more and more we're living in an intangible world and
Hmm.
intellectual property. So I have hundreds of my strategic coach clients now who have thousands of patents. And you also have copyrights, you have
Hmm.
trademarks, you have trade secrets, you have trade design. But your creativity that you get paid retail for has a lasting value if you go through the right steps.
Well, I'm going to share the research, Dan, too, because this is, so I'm sure some of you are going, geez, I don't know. This seems like an awful lot of work. And the world has really changed. So it's opened up like crazy for you to have these knowledge-based, unique ability, patents and other, trademarks and so on. And I want to show you this. If Dan didn't hit you, I'm going to give you the numbers that will. Okay. Because, again, we're now at number four. And what we're doing here with four is, again, it's the greater property, it's your genius.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we find that so many entrepreneurs are founder dependent. So the typical EBITDA, the multiplier on earnings, the before income tax and depreciation and amortization is a multiple of somewhere around 3 to 5. This is, taking all industries. Obviously, there's going to be differences on different industries. But when you start moving toward the self-managed team, you can make a big impact, and that's 8 to 12. That's where you're no longer dependent. But we're going to go into more how you can really create your own markets. But if you are the market architect, all of a sudden the multiples just go up so dramatically. And I really love this line, Dan. Your genius either becomes your empire or your prison. And one of the things we want to do is make it your empire. This is where I think this is one of the most important multipliers that once you take care of yourself, from both the ambition to get started, you've got your security taken care of, hopefully like a virtual family office, and then you're moving up and you've got your motivation. Well, now we're really building some major assets, this intellectual property, and it makes you so distinctive in a world that is not very distinctive at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. It's we talked in the previous podcast, the motivation that you have, for your contribution in dollars because you have a particular skill and
Mhm.
everything. But you get paid emotionally if in expanding your success, you're expanding other people's success. You get an emotional, and that's the basis for motivation. Continuous, always expanding motivation is that your success is actually multiplying other people's success. Well, this is an added thing, and there's a really interesting way of looking at this. You got a great house, and over the years, it's appreciated, and you think about your house, and you're thinking about selling it, and you should clean up, and you go into the attic, and somehow, through some set of circumstances, you find a Rembrandt that's been packed away in a box somewhere because you bought the house from somebody else and you have it. And whatever you thought the value of the house was, it just became very, very tiny compared with the Rembrandt. That's what intellectual property is. It's like you discovered a Rembrandt in your attic. Not only one, but maybe, maybe a Cezanne, maybe maybe a Picasso and everything like that. But here you actually created those paintings. This is your unique development of your company's skill and your skill, and it's been validated by going through the intellectual process. You copyright everything, you get trademarks for
Mhm.
everything. But the big jump is the patents. The patents are the nuclear weapon of the intellectual property world. And I went through a valuation with somebody who's a terrific, he's a terrific seller of people's companies. Okay. And I told him, I gave him, this is where we were before we started the patent process. And, we're a very well structured company. We have lots of processes in our company. And he gave me a valuation, and it was in the 3 to 5% thing. And I said, but in the last 3 to 4 years, we've now turned our thinking tools into patents. And he says, well, it's a rough estimate, but he said, you whatever valuation I gave you before, it's now 3 times what I gave you
Yeah.
before, just because of the patents.
No, and well, you and I were talking. I did a little deep research, and I thought, using Google Gemini, and it very quickly did found all your patents, and it said, raise the val how you would value. I mean, this is common knowledge. Other than so many times we're so busy as entrepreneurs that we're not protecting this, and it's a missed opportunity. And then people want to work with people that own intellectual property. Yeah, Dan, I want to go into Keegan Caldwell. He's been one of the great resources you've had as strategic coach. You've introduced me and many of the other entrepreneurs you work with, and Keegan's really made a difference in all our lives. But I'd love you to just share a little bit of what he's done because it's interesting. We think really, he was a high paid employee working 80 hours a week, and but it was his own firm and he hated it. And he started then creating the IP. And, why don't you tell the story there?
Well, the big thing is that just the as far as his involvement with IP was, he was a patent clerk in the U.S. Patent, and he began to analyze how patents came in the door and how they proceeded. And we had patents before we met Keegan. We had 3 or 4, and it took forever to get the patents. It took forever, and that was partially the issue. But what Keegan created is a phenomenal process where your patent applications are written in a particular way. I call it patentese. It's a language that I don't understand, and he has diagrams that translate, how the value is actually created, and that when he puts them in, and there's a accelerator in the patent bureau where for extra money. I mean, the Patent Bureau makes money. It's the one part of the government that
Mhm.
actually makes money. They're a profit-making part of the government out of, skill and, what they're due for you. But what he realized was that he could shorten enormously the process and the speed by which you get a patent back. And I average about a patent every 2 weeks, and I just sit there and it's just like, whoa, there's another one. It's like Christmas that never stops. And and the
No,
present
it's well,
the
intellectual.
chimney gets bigger and the presents get bigger. Yeah.
Well, and intellectual property in today's world is the new currency. It's
Yeah.
really, we're creating all kinds of value, and if you're not doing it, you're falling behind. And I want to give a little framing on this is that, this is a core shift that Dan and I are asking you to do because, what most of us as entrepreneurs have been taught is we should optimize. Let's work on 2X. We're gonna, work harder on our current model. We're gonna get it right, damn it. right away. I think we're going to fight the physics. We're just through hard work, we're going to make it work. We're going to get linear growth. We're going to be satisfied with that 10% a year, 15, whatever it is. And we're going to be stuck in that 3 to 5 multiplier. I mean, and the big thing is you are the business
Mhm.
and it's very fragile, as we all are. So what we want you to do is move over here to the architect. And I don't know, I love 100x. That's why the book is all about 100x, the greater game. We're no longer going to just do incremental. We're going to build platforms and ecosystems. And this is, really, as we were writing this, Dan, I got to expand. I got to do this. You've already built your ecosystem. I have now new models, exponential growth. And all of a sudden, wow, what a
Mhm.
difference.
Mhm.
And the business runs without you. And that's where it's really powerful. It doesn't mean you have to leave the business. It's a lot more fun when it can run without you. And it's built on the multipliers, these 10 that we're talking about. We're right now the IP, Dan. And I mean, you've been one of the leaders in moving from this optimization to, the architect
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the big thing it's just a new world. Yeah, I mean, we're yeah, and this really happened with the microchip. There's the very famous Moore's law that was created in the 19 Gordon Moore, who's became one of the founders of Intel. But he just noticed that this new thing, which was called an integrated circuit, he said, I said, I just noticed that about every 18 months to 2 years, we get more computing power and the cost of the computing drops in half. So it's a 4 times every time a new chip. And he had measured one, and then 18 months later, and then he had a third one. And he said, I just wonder how long this goes. Well, it's been going, and it's even faster now. It's than the every 2 years. And so that's been going for roughly 60 years. And that's where the exponential growth in the world is coming from, is the application of microchips to every other invention, every other piece of machinery, every other part of process, but it's also the application of the microchip to the microchip to create more powerful microchips. So the whole thing is that we're living in a new world. We're living in an accelerating exponential economy if you have your mindsets right and you have built your business around the 10 multipliers that we're talking about here. But not only that, you're getting the measurement that tells you that you're making great progress. And I can tell you, you could take every other concept that we do in this in the Greater Game book, and you could do it. But if you don't do the measurement and you don't compare your progress with other people's progress, you'll stop.
No, it's so true. And I want to, one of the things you and I are going to say over and over again, because this is really fundamental to both of us, is we want to bring people, our fellow entrepreneurs, on this journey together. We have, the privilege to be where we are. We've got all kinds of empirical research. We're studying every month now 500 entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, and what's working for them, what's not, where is their confidence level, what lessons can we learn? And then, Dan, with your organization, we've got the applied experience, what, on the individual, the specific, and we bring that together and it's a wow. And we bring it together so it's easy for you to get. I mean, certainly get the book. But once you've got the book and you start reading, you'll see at the end of each of these chapters, multipliers, we have a little tool to go through. But Dan and I have created with our teams the greater dashboard, the greatergamedashboard.com. If you're listening to this, there's a QR code on the screen now, and it's the greater multiplier index. It's an assessment that you can do. It takes 15 minutes. You can see where you score. You can get everything in plain English. You're going to see each of the stages of the greater game pyramid, the three moves that we would do if we were you using, the tools that we have. And then you're going to get the entrepreneurial pulse, a monthly benchmarking of how you're doing against your peers. And one of the things we all want to do is, I don't know, I live in Silicon Valley. I'm in a pretty affluent area. There aren't that many entrepreneurs even when I go out. It's hard to explain what I do, with some of the local friends. On the other hand, I love getting together at Strategic Coach with my peers, with entrepreneurs, and you can do it as well at the dashboard. So just come in, take the assessment, you click on here, whole bunch of questions will come up, a small series for each of the multipliers. You can go, once you've got that, you'll be able to sign in and you'll have the ability to go and look at how are you scoring in each of the stages, each of the multipliers. You'll get an overview of your financial readiness, greater security is the second multiplier. Any changes since you last took it, the three moves that we would have you do and why. And then again, one of the things that's so important is your security. That's the VFO second opinion. Make sure to take advantage of that with vetted financial advisors who deliver an amazing experience. But what they're going to do is do it a second opinion for you, where you are now, where you want to go, and the gaps. And one of the things, and this is why, Dan, I'm in Strategic Coach, is the acceleration. I wanted to have those thinking tools. I want to have the people that are there. And, we were talking about IP. One of the things that can happen is it will measure where we think, it's not, we're not going to buy the businesses back at these multipliers, but we're going to show you what the predictive analytics says through the way you answered these, where you stand right now. And you can see, this is a demo one, but you can see the valuation. And then one of the things I love is you'll get the peer. You can see against all entrepreneurs, the top 5.4 in your revenue range, where you are. And this is going to give you guidance. We're going to keep on building this up, Dan, because we are committed to the journey. But why don't you wrap this one up if you would?
Yeah, I think the big thing here is you can sort of consider everything you've done as an entrepreneur to stage one of your entrepreneurial lifetime. Okay. And you've done the hard work. I mean, it's not easy being an entrepreneur. It's not easy being an entrepreneur. And we want you to know that all the work that you've done up until now brought you to a point now where you can take advantage of incredible acceleration and incredible exponential growth. And it's going to be easier, much, much easier than stage one. Stage two is going to be, it's all reward from now on. You did all the hard work, you did all the investment, now you get the return on all of your investment.
So let's capture that right now so you can make an even bigger impact, create value for others, and do well by yourself. And what we have here is, join us in game, get the Greater Game book, join us on the dashboard, the Greater Game dashboard.com, see where you are, get access to the new research, and then join us in the greater community where your competition becomes your multiplier.